In this tutorial, I will add a collaboration feature in File Manager web app in Laravel. These will be the steps we will do one by one. First, while sharing the file, we must set the permission for the other user, if you can only read or if you can write to the file. Go to app.blade.php. This is the share model. In the form, I will create a drop-down select menu. It will have two options, one for read and one for write. Give this an ID because it will be visible for text files only. So go in single file.js. In this show share model, check if the file extension is either text or any of the programming language source code file. If yes, then show the permission dropdown. By default, this will be hidden. So this is visible for text files only. Now when this form submits, we need to save the permission value. This is the API that is called. It calls share method in files controller. Get access type value. Default will be empty, or you can set as read. Set this value in file shares table. Then we need to create a migration to add this column in file shares table. It will be enum. It will have only two possible values, read or write. And default will be read. We can also add a little condition to make sure the access type must be either read or write. Run this migration. So a new column has been created. Now try to share with other user. Give him write access. Now log in as second user and allow him to edit the file. First we need to show him an edit button if he was given write access to this file. Look for Files Shares API. Go to this method. Here in the select list, return access type 2 and add it in files array. Now go to singlefile.js. It already has an edit button for owner of file. We can copy this and put a condition to check if file is shared with me and I have write permission to it. If yes, then show the edit button. If I try to change the permission of user to read, he won't see this button. Changing back to write. When this button is clicked, this function is called and it calls this API that fetches the content of file. Right now, only the file owner can fetch the content. Now we will make the user who has write permission to it can also fetch the content of file. We will remove this condition from where shortly. Check if the file is shared with me. And I have write permission to it. And condition if I am not the owner of the file. Nor the file is shared with me with write permission. Then return an error. Now remove this condition from query. And in the extension where we are checking for only text files, check for all possible source code files too. So the content has been fetched for both the user who has write permission and the owner of the file. Now I need to allow user to update the content of file. Go to Edit File component, search for this API. Here we will use the same condition as on fetch content. So submit the code side by side. First, remove the file owner condition from query. Copy paste this condition. And same goes for extension. Now even if the edit file model is opened and you change the permission to read, you won't be able to do it. So client and server side validations both are important. Also the content of file remains unchanged. Changing back to right. Now I will be able to do it. We must also create a table that saves all the updates of the file. So the owner will know who updated the content of file and what he has updated. So create a new migration for table file logs. In this table, we will have user ID that will be the user who updated the content of file. File ID, which file's content has been updated, and what was the new content. Run this migration. A new table has been created. Now, whenever the update content method is called, we will insert a new row in this table. The time when the content was updated, so even if the owner of file updates the content or the second user with right permission, it will always save the logs. Now the owner of the file must be able to view all the logs on file detail page. So in the file detail API, We will fetch all from file logs, where file ID matches. Inner join with users table so we know which user updated it. Return all columns from file logs and from users table we only need his name and profile image. We will get that later. Sort by descending so the latest logs appears at top. It is always a good practice to create a separate array. Loop through all rows and push it in that array. It will help you specify the columns you want to return from an API. Create a separate object so if we want to modify any column's value, we can do easily. We will return log ID, username. We can also return user's profile image. The content, and the time it was updated. We will return the image in user's local time zone. The user profile image is relative, but we must return it as absolute. First, check if the image exists in storage. If yes, then update the object's user profile value to absolute path. And finally, return the logs array. So the log has been returned. Now we must show them. In detail component, create a state for logs. It will be an array and set its value when the response is received from detail API. Now below the shared with section, we will show logs. First show the heading, create a row, and a 12 column section. And a table, table head. We will show user, time when it was updated, and in action we will create a button to show the content of file. In tbody, loop through all logs Create a table row for each log. Every row will have a unique key. In first column, show the username. And his profile image. All logs has been displayed. Now we will show this table on first 4 columns only. Show the content on second 8 columns. Create a card. Inside this, we will show file content. Create the state variable. Initialize it as empty. Now when this content button is clicked, set the state variable to logs content. So it's done. There is still one issue in this. What if two users start editing the same file? In this case, we must log the file once a user starts editing and release the log once he leaves the page. So add another column logged by in files table. Add an integer. Default value will be 0. Run the migration. Column is created. Now in update content API, check if the file is logged. And if it is not logged by me, then return an error. And in files table, tell that the file has been logged by me. It is logged by user 2 and now user 3 won't be able to edit it. Now we must release the lock when user leaves the page. Go to app.blade.php. Add an event listener before unload. This will be called when user leaves the page. In this function, we will call an Ajax. Copy paste the Ajax code from detail component. Make the function asynchronous. API path will be release log. No need to send form data here. And no need to handle the response. Create this API's route. Create this method in files controller. Get authenticated user. Fetch all the files that are logged by this user. And set their log to 0. Log has been set. Set preserve log so you can see that the API is called when user leaves the page. So the API is called and the log is released. Now try with file owner as well. Everything works fine now. So this was the collaboration feature in File Manager web app in Laravel. I will mention its download link in the description of this video. You can download it and let me know if you face any issue in this.